Hello everybody, and today I'll be doing a Gym Leader Challenge set review of Destined Rivals. So starting off with the Lurantis, with the Flower Cutting Dance, 130 for 1 grass energy, but you have to discard 2 basic grass energy from your hand for the attack to do anything. I think this is a cool card. You can definitely build around it. There's a Sunflora with a similar attack, double colorless, Bright Beam, does 10 plus, and then you discard up to 3 energy from your hand, and it does 70 more for each energy you discarded. So you could play a grass deck where you want to focus on discarding energy from your hand and then recycling it. The Eldegoss with the Cotton Lift lets you, once during a turn, search deck for up to 2 basic energy, reveal them, and put them into your hand. So you can use the Eldegoss to reset and use the Flower Cutting Dance with the Lurantis every turn, and then you can buff the damage up to 150 with Muscle Band. So Rocket Spite Ops. Rocket's Pokemon are a new like trainer subtype from the set, and I think they're interesting as a whole, but unfortunately in GLC only being able to play singleton copies, it can be more difficult for you to utilize them. So there's Rocket Spite Ops with the Charge Up, where once during a turn you can attach a basic energy from your discard pile to the Rocket Spite Ops, and then Rocket Rush for a Grass and a Colorless does 30 damage for each of your Team Rocket's Pokemon in play. So there is only one Rocket's grass Pokemon, and that is the Spite Up, so it will only be capped at 30 damage. But Charge Up lets you accelerate any basic energy, not just grass. So you can use it in combination with Energy Switch to accelerate energy to another Pokemon, and maybe create like a low to the ground grass box deck that you use Spite Ups to charge energy into play, and then Energy Switch and other cards that move energy to your other Pokemon to use their attacks. And then there's a Sceptile with Powerful Storm. One grass does 20 for all of the energy in play attached to your Pokemon, so the Spite Ops can help you recycle some of that energy. So Shaman is a very, very big card to come out of Destined Rivals. It has the Flower Curtain, which prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon without a rule box by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. The without a rule box text is not relevant because no Pokemon in GLC have rule boxes. So this is just a basic bench barrier Pokemon, and this is very powerful. Water has Manaphy, and Psychic has Mew and Mr. Mime, but Grass has its own now. It had one before, which is Rabsco with the Spherical Shield, which prevents all damage and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to your bench Pokemon. So Shaman doesn't protect from effects of attacks, but it's just a basic Pokemon that you can throw down and have instant bench protection. It does lessen your damage with Torterra, so you do have to be careful with that. Torterra's Evo Press does 50 damage for each of your evolution Pokemon in play, and Torterra is a very, very common card to be played in grass. So if you're counting on doing 300 damage with Torterra, you have to be careful on when you bench your Shaman. I don't know how relevant that's going to be, but it could come up at some point, so just be careful when you do bench it. And then the other important thing is that you can't find it off of Buddy Buddy Poffin because it does have that 80 HP, which is not as big of a deal for grass because grass has a whole bunch of abilities or on just general ways to search out Pokemon. So it's not too big of a deal, but you can't get it off Buddy Buddy Poffin. So next up is Rapidash, which opens up a whole new draw engine for fire decks. Before, a lot of fire decks were opting for Salazzle either with or without the Magcargo. Salazzle, you discard a fire energy from your hand to draw 3 cards, and then Magcargo lets you search your deck for any card and put it on top of your deck after shuffling. So Magcargo gets you any cards you need, and then Salazzle lets you discard an energy to draw that card plus 2 more. Now, this is a pretty solid engine, the problem being that you have to continuously recycle fire energy. With the Rapidash, its Hurried Gate ability lets you just once during your turn draw a card, so you can smooth over any card you want out of your deck and then just draw it for free, as opposed to discarding an energy. It does let you see less cards overall, but Fire has a whole ton of supporter-based acceleration that they can use to draw cards like Welder, which you attach 2 fire energy from your hand and then you draw 3 cards. So there's still very powerful draw that fire has access to, and this opens up a less destructive new draw engine for people to work with. Next up is the Blaziken. I'm really, really excited for whenever Blaziken gets a new card because there's like a really, really fun Torchic you get to mess around with, but I'll talk about that in just a second. The Blaziken has the Inferno Legs attack for 2 fire and a colorless, does 120 damage. Then you discard 2 energy from it, and it does 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this is really cool. Fire has a whole bunch of ways to get energy into play, keep energy into play, and recycle it if need be. There's reversal energy, which if you're behind on prizes and it's attached to an evolution Pokemon without a Roblox, which is irrelevant, it provides 3 energy of every type, but only 3 energy at a time. So this instantly charges up Inferno Legs. Blacksmith lets you attach up to 2 fire energy from your discard pile to one of your fire Pokemon. So this gets you 2/3 of the way to an Inferno Legs, and then you just attach for turn. And then Enstar Manitan has a similar attack with Blaze Ball Cannon. For 2 fire and a colorless, you discard all energy from the Darmanitan, and then you do 90 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon as well as 90 to the active. So it's a similar attack, just 30 damage less. And then the Torchic that I mentioned has the Barrage Ancient trait, which lets it use an attack that it has twice. So you can use this with technical machines like Technical Machine Evolution or Technical Machine Turbo Energize or Crisis Punch to let you use those things twice. So if you use Crisis Punch and your opponent's at 1 prize and you still need to take 2, you can promote the Torchic, Blacksmith 2 energy to it, attach for turn, attach Crisis Punch, and you get to do 280 damage twice, which should realistically close out a game. So next up is the Huntail with the Diver Catch. When one of your water Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you may put all basic water energy attached to that Pokemon in your hand instead of the discard pile. Now this could be a cool little recycle engine for Hydro Pump decks. Frostmoth and Baxcalibur both let you attach as many energy from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. Frostmoth is specifically to the bench. And then Wailord with the Hydro Pump attack does 10 plus 50 for each water energy attached to it. So you might have to load up a lot of water energy, which could be a big commitment. But if you have Diver Catch Huntail in play, it's not that big of a problem, and you just put it all back into your hand. And then there's the Lapras with the Hydro Pump attack as well. Hydro Pump does 10 plus 30 for each water energy attached to it. And you can just, that can be more of a commitment than the Wailord, but it is a basic. So you put up the Lapras, you attach a whole bunch of energy to it, take a KO, and then you Diver Catch, put all the energy back into your hand to re-accelerate next turn with Frostmoth and Baxcalibur. Next up is the Gorbis, and I'm really excited about this Gorbis. I think it's a cool card. The Crescendo Wave attack does 30 damage for each water energy attached to the Gorbis, but before doing damage, you can attach any number of water energy from your hand to the Gorbis. So you can put 5 or 6 energy on it after just attaching 1 energy to it, and then you can pretty much take a KO on anything as long as you have enough energy. And what I think is really cool about this is the ability to save the energy after you attach it. So you can use EXP Share, you can use Wishful Baton, both tools that let you recycle energy. EXP Share you attach to a bench Pokemon. When your active is knocked out, you move a basic energy from that Pokemon to the Pokemon the EXP Share is attached to. And then Wishful Baton you attach to your active, and when it's knocked out, you move 3 energy from it to one of your bench Pokemon. So that's 4 energy saved right there. And then if you can get the Kingdra online early enough, you can use Deep Sea King to move all the energy from your active to it when your active gets knocked out. So if you accelerated 8 or 9 energy to the Gorbis, you can move it all back to the Kingdra, and then you can either go in with Aqua Burst, which does 40 for each water energy attached to the Kingdra, or you can save the energy and disperse it with the Washout Quagsire, which lets you, as often as you like during a turn, move a water energy from one of your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon. So I think this is a really cool card, and I'll definitely be messing around with it. Next up is Misty Starmie with the Sun Flash, which does 60 plus 80 if it evolved from Misty Staryu during this turn. And for just 1 water, that's 140. This can apply very early pressure. It can be reset with Scoop Up Net, which water already plays because of Shady Dealings in Teleon, which is an insane consistency engine. And it can kind of find a home in the low attacking version of water with Palafin, Frostlass, and Seismitoad, all of which have 1 or 2 energy attack costs that can be pretty quickly paid, and they do a decent chunk of damage. Starmie fits in pretty nicely, doing 140 for 1. Palafin's got the Jet Punch 30 to the active, 30 to the bench, and then Justice Kick for 2 does 210 if it moved from the bench to the active. Seismitoad's a good stage 2 with the Quaking Zone, where as long as it's in the active, your opponent's attacks cost one colorless more. And then Echoed Voice does 100 for 2 water, and then if it stays in the active and you use Echoed Voice again, does 120 more. And then Frostless with the Spiteful Sigh, you put up to 7 damage counters on it, and then it does 20 damage for each damage counter you placed in this wave. So just Low to the Ground Water just has a new attacker with the Starmie. Next up is the Ampharos. I don't know how viable it's going to be, but it's definitely cool in theory. It has the Darkest Impulse ability. Whenever your opponent plays a Pokemon from their hand to evolve one of their Pokemon during their turn, you put 4 damage counters on that Pokemon. The effect doesn't stack, but that doesn't matter because you can only have one effect active at once. So you can use this with the likes of De-Evolution, which puts all of your opponent's high stage evolution cards back into their hand, and then you can combo with more spread cards. Tapu Koko does 20 damage to everything. Electivire does 50 damage to everything, and then Regieleki does 120 to the active and 40 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So if you get the Ampharos up early, then your opponent will have like a really tough time playing around all the spread that you have access to, especially if they're playing like a heavily involved evolution deck, like grass type, grass deck specifically will really struggle against Ampharos if you can get a devolution up. So next up is Ethan's Pichu. I think this is a really, really cool card and also kind of just hilarious. Sparking Draw for free does 30 damage and you draw a card. The reason I think it's so funny is because it's a lightning type, which lets it use Electro Power to boost its damage by 30, and then you can attach a Muscle Band to boost its damage by 20 more. So now you can attack for free, potentially doing 80 damage, taking a prize card, and drawing a card. So you get 2 cards and you take a knockout. So I think that's really cool. And if you can consistently get this off turn 1, then you can pretty easily just win the game. Rotom with the Gadget Show for 2 colorless does 30 damage for each tool card attached to all your Pokemon. Now, Lightning has 2 other Pokemon with similar attacks, Pachirisu and Electrode. Pachirisu for a Lightning and a colorless does 30 damage, again, for each Pokemon tool card attached to all your Pokemon. And then Electrode does 20 damage for 1 Lightning. It does 20 plus, and instead of just counting the tools that you have in play, you have to discard them from your Pokemon, but it does 40 more damage. So it's more damage, but you have to get rid of the tools. Now, you can use Adventure Bag, which lets you search your deck for up to 2 tools, 2 tool cards, and then the Lana's Fishing Rod lets you shuffle a basic Pokemon and a tool card back into your deck. So you can kind of recycle the tools, get them out early, attach them to your Pokemon, use Rotom and Pachirisu early-ish game, and then go in with Electrode to finish. Next up is the Rocket's Chingling. It's another baby Pokemon with a free attack, ringing noise. You discard a random card from your opponent's hand. Now, I think this is cool with other like control cards that Psychic has access to. Banette has the Cursed Words, which for 1 Psychic, your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand into their deck. The Garbotoxin Garbodor is very, very strong. If it has a tool card attached, no Pokemon in play in the discard pile or in either player's hand has abilities. So you can really lock your opponent down while you use Ringing Noise for the first couple turns, and then Gothitelle with the Read the Stars. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, put 1 back, and put the other on the bottom. And I think the Chingling has merit because of Team Rocket's Archer, which you can use only if any of your Team Rocket's Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck, you get 5 and your opponent gets 3. Now, if you go Chingling, discard a couple cards from their hand, they KO it. You promote Banette and you go Rocket's Archer to put them down to 3 cards, and then you attach a tool to Garbodor, they're now ability locked, and then you use Cursed Words and they're at 0 cards in hand. So they're 0 cards in hand, ability locked, and you're going to be removing the card that they do get in their hand every turn with Cursed Words. So I think this could be a cool combo. Next up is Rocket's Hypno. I don't think this is very good, but 80 times multiplier is really, really funny. So for 3 Psychic, it has Bench Manipulation. Your opponent flips a coin for each of their bench Pokemon, and the attack does 80 damage for each Tails. You don't apply weakness and resistance. So 80 damage, again, is rather hilarious. Psychic has plenty of ways to charge this up. Xatu with the Clairvoyant Sense lets you attach a Psychic Energy from hand to one of your bench Pokemon, and you draw 2 cards. Malamar lets you put a Psychic Energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So it's not too big of an issue to power it up, but the problem is your opponent can play around it. So try it out if you want to. Next up is the Annihilate. I think this card could be really, really cool with the Vessel of Rage ability, where if it has 2 or more damage counters on it, attacks used by it do 120 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And then Impact Blow for 2 fighting does 160, and it can't use Impact Blow during your next turn. There's a Relicanth with the Memory Dive that your evolution Pokemon can use the attacks of its previous evolutions. So, for example, Annihilate could use the attack of the Primeape right here, which is also new from Destined Rivals, with the Drag Off for one fighting. You switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active, and then it does 30 damage to the new active Pokemon. However, if Vessel of Rage is active on the Annihilate, it'll do 150 damage to the new active Pokemon for just one fighting. So you can potentially bring up their draw engine. You could bring up their next attacker that you can't possibly potentially deal with. You can bring up something that you can just KO for a free prize if you can't KO their active Pokemon. And then you can activate the Vessel of Rage with something like Old Cemetery, where when any player attaches an energy from their hand to one of their non-psychic Pokemon, you put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So that immediately lets you attach a basic fighting and go Primeape, drag off 150 to whatever you want. So Rocket's Tyranitar is next. The Sandstream ability, where as long as it's in the active, you put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's basic Pokemon during Pokemon Checkup. And then Breakthrough Tackle for a fighting and 3 colorless does 180 damage, and you discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, the attack isn't great, but if you don't have to attack with it, I think it's pretty solid. So you can attach a Luxurious Cape to it, put it up to 280 HP, or you can use Devolution to force your opponent back down to basic Pokemon and guarantee 2 damage counters when you use the Devolution, and when it goes over to your opponent's turn, you'll guarantee 2 damage counters. And I think you could do something cool with the Hit and Run Hitmonchan. For one fighting, you do 30 damage and switch it with one of your bench Pokemon. If you promote the Tyranitar, you still get to activate Sandstream because the Tyranitar is in the active in between turns. Next up is the Metacham with the Harmonious Disposition. For one fighting, 50 plus. If this Pokemon and your opponent's active Pokemon have the same amount of energy attached, the attack does 120 more. So you can play ways to limit the amount of energy you have on your opponent's active with Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, and Team Flare Grunt. Crushing Hammer discards an energy on a coin flip. Enhanced Hammer discards a special energy, and Team Flare Grunt just discards an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So Rocket's Arbok might be my favorite card coming out of this set with the Intimidating Glare, where as long as it's your active Pokemon, your opponent can't play any cards with ability. Your opponent can't play any Pokemon with abilities from their hand, excluding Rocket's Pokemon. And then Spinning Tail for 3 Dark, you do 30 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. This can be very, very limiting because a lot of Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon have abilities because that's why people are playing them. So you can go Spinning Tail, and just 3 Spinning Tails is enough to take out a lot of basic Pokemon. And it's not too difficult to ask for 3 Spinning Tails because your opponent's going to be limited in what Pokemon they can play. You can potentially get this out on your first turn going first with Boost Shake, or on your first turn going second with Wally, and then you can use Technical Machine Devolution to put your opponent's ability Pokemon back in their hand so they can't play them if you get the Arbok up a little bit later. And then Team Rocket's Energy is a new card out of the set. The card can only be attached to a Team Rocket's Pokemon. If it's attached to anything else, you discard it. And then as long as it's attached to a Pokemon, it provides 2 in any combination of Psychic and Dark. So this gets 2 out of the 3 energy for the Spinning Tail attack cost. You just need to get 1 more on there and you're swinging 30 everywhere. Next up is the Rocket's Murkrow. So Dark by far has the most potential for a Rocket's archetype, and the Murkrow with 80 HP, Swindle lets you search a deck for a supporter, reveal it, and put it in your hand. And then Torment for a Dark and a Colorless is 30 damage. You choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks, and they can't use it during their next turn. So with this, you can grab something like Team Rocket's Archer, which I mentioned earlier. If one of your Rocket's Pokemon are knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you can force them to shuffle draw 3, and you shuffle draw 5. There's Team Rocket's Giovanni, which is essentially a Guzma for Rocket's Pokemon only. You switch your active Rocket's Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon, and if you do, you switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. So if you play the Arbok and the Murkrow, you can attach a U-turn board to the Murkrow, and then you can use the Giovanni to put the Murkrow into the active and bring one of your opponent's Pokemon up, and then free retreat back into the Arbok to keep the lock going. And then you can also use Torment for just one energy with the Rocket's energy. Next up is Team Rocket Sneasel, the hit the wound attack for 2 dark. This attack does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon for each damage counter already on that Pokemon. So you can go more spread based with this, with the Absol with the Swirling Disaster, which does 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. Yveltal with the Corrosive Winds puts 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that already has any on it. So you can go Absol into Yveltal into hit the wound on any of your opponent's Pokemon to take a KO pretty much. And then you can also pair it with the Arbok, go like 2 spinning tails, and then if they take out the Arbok, you can pretty much take out whatever you want with hit the wound because everything will have 6 damage counters on it. And then Team Rocket's energy again lets it attack for 1 energy attachment. So Team Rocket's receiver lets you search a deck for a supporter card with Rocket in its name, reveal it, and put it in your hand. So I didn't talk about all the Rocket supporter cards. There's Team Rocket's Ariana and Team Rocket's Proton. I don't think either will be relevant in GLC because their effects just aren't. Like, they're more geared towards having 4 counts of things like in Standard. Team Rocket's Ariana lets you draw until you have 5 cards in your hand, or 8 if you exclusively have Rocket's Pokemon in play, which Dark has the most probability of doing, but even then you would have to have like 3 Pokemon in play max for all the Rocket's Pokemon that you have access to. Team Rocket's Proton lets you, if you can use it on your first turn, going first, but it only lets you get 3 basic Rocket's Pokemon and put them in your hand. Now, the problem with this, again, is you only play 3 basic Rocket's Pokemon. So you have to find a supporter turn 1 going first to get set up a little bit. Team Rocket's Petrol, I do think is playable. Lets you search your deck for 1 trainer card, just any trainer card, and put it in your hand. Giovanni, I mentioned, was like a Guzma, and then Archer, I mentioned, was some hand disruption, and they can all be gotten off of the receiver. So it's great because you can go receiver into Petrol, Petrol into any trainer that you need for the turn, or receiver into Giovanni, which you can't do with Guzma, or receiver into Archer for some hand disruption after one of your Rocket's Pokemon gets taken out. So the Rocket Surprise Bomb, you flip a coin. If heads, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If tails, put 2 damage counters on your active Pokemon. Now, it is coin flippy, and the active thing won't work in every deck. Like, put 2 damage counters on your active if you hit tails won't work in every deck. But there are a couple Pokemon that it could work with. Moltres with the Inferno Wings does 20 plus 70 if it has any damage counters on it, so you could use the Venture Bomb to put damage counters on it if you hit tails. Galarian Rodriguez with the Spreading Spite for 2 colorless. You put 2 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like for each damage counter on the Galarian Rodriguez. And then Monkey Dory is just a very, very powerful card. Adrenaline Brain, if it has a Dark Energy attached, you can move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So with a Monkey Dory in play and a Dark Energy attached, Team Rocket's Venture Bomb just reads put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Next up is the Rocket's Factory. It lets you, once during either player's turn, if that player played a supporter with Team Rocket in its name from their hand, you draw 2 cards. So this is good. It's a bit of a draw engine, which Dark doesn't have the best of, and you can get it off of Petrol. So you can go Team Rocket's Receiver into Petrol, Petrol into Team Rocket's Factory, draw 2. Or you can go Receiver into Giovanni, Giovanni boss something up that you need to take out, and then Team Rocket's Factory for 2. So it turns your Guzma into a draw 2. And then it lets your Rocket's Archer put you up to 7 cards instead of 5. So it's a very good effect if you can find it. The problem would be finding it, but if you get it down and it sticks, you can go Petrol to just get you any support or any trainer card, and it also thins out the deck so you have better odds to draw what else you need off of Rocket's Factory. So next, finally, is Rocket's Watchtower. Both players colorless Pokemon have no abilities. If your local meta has a ton of colorless and you really don't want to deal with it, you can throw in a Watchtower. This shuts off their Bibarel, their Squivit, their Oranguru, just all the draw that colorless has. And then it's kind of similar to a Hex Maniac, but it won't affect you. The problem is they can just bump it with another stadium, but you can play something like Lusamine, which lets you put two in any combination of supporter card and stadium from your discard pile back in your hand to reuse it. So once you think they're out of stadiums, you can put the Watchtower back into play and see if it sticks. And if it does, it makes life extremely difficult for any colorless players. So thanks for watching. In the description below, I'll leave the official Gym Leader Challenge website, the Cardboard Warriors website, and the place where I got the proxies from if you want to go check those out. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.